church buildings that were leveled to the ground. All that's gone.
How do most people back up their computer?
You don't have a backup at all.
How do backups help people who work in a church? In your experience, how do most people back up their computer?
Well, most people don't back up their computer. And those who do typically use one of a few methods. So they'll use the built-in, not built-in, sometimes it's built into a computer, a Dropbox trial. So they'll back up, I think it's 5 or 10 gigabytes to Dropbox, or lately it's become the Microsoft OneDrive backup. OneDrive, they're just storing their files on there.
Gotcha.
And the other one would be USB backups to an external drive, and we'll talk about each one of those.
So are Dropbox and OneDrive like in the cloud?
They are in the cloud.
Gotcha.
And being in the cloud is really good. It's the best way to do backups because if the building burns, you don't lose it. If you have a flood, a theft, lightning strike, other electrical surges.
As long as you have access to your account, you still have access to your information.
The problem with Dropbox and OneDrive as backups is they have really small limits to the free storage that's available. And when you exceed those limits, it just doesn't back up anything else to those destinations. So again, kind of like the trial versions of McAfee and Norton that come on most computers, you have these trial versions of Dropbox and OneDrive, and if you trust that everything's being backed up to them, as long as it fits within that free space, then you're pretty well protected. But if it doesn't, then those files just aren't backed up.
What about external drives?
Yes, so another very popular option is to run down to Best Buy or even Walmart or buy on Amazon an external hard drive that you just plug in with a USB cable. And those can be very good, but they have their own problems as well. They're normally plenty large enough in terms of storage to fit everything on your computer. But how often do you remember to back up to it? That's one of the biggest problems right there.
Does it not back up automatically?
No, not unless you buy special software for that purpose. And I'm not aware of any of those that come with that software on it. But even if it did, you would still have multiple other problems. But more on the remembering to back up, we all have the best of intentions. So I'm going to buy this drive, I take it out of the box as soon as I get back from Best Buy with it. I plug it into my computer, I back up, probably a week later I back up, and maybe a week later, and then I think, well, I haven't done that much this week, or I just forget about it, or I'm busy, or I'm gone that day, and so I don't do it that time. And what happens almost universally is that, you wake up 6 months or a year later and realize, I haven't done a backup. Or worse, something happens to your computer and now you have to restore from that backup, and that's when you realize, oh, when's the last time I did that?
That, or if something catastrophic happened and the backup was located in with the whole time.
That's exactly right. So where do you store that physical hard drive whenever you're not backing up? Most people just leave it connected to their computer. Well, that's kind of one of the worst places you can leave it, because it's connected to the computer. So if you get a ransomware infection, for instance, on your computer, then it's going to also encrypt your backups, which means that you don't have a backup at all because you can't access it. Even if it's not connected to your computer, you still have all the potential problems that are connected with any physical device. So if someone breaks in and steals things, it's gone. If you have a lightning strike, well, if it's disconnected from the computer, it's probably okay in that scenario. But if you have a fire, a water leak, and a lot of people think, oh, those things just never happen to me. But you know what? They do. If I asked you, Jordan, if you had insurance on your home, what would you say?
Yes.
Of course. And you wouldn't take the risk. Even though if I asked you, Jordan, do you think your house is going to burn down or have a flood,
tornado,
earthquake, yes, whatever it is.
Most likely not.
Yeah, most likely not. But you still pay for that insurance.
Yeah.
And so that device sitting on your desk, even if you put it someplace else in the office, it's still subject to all those risks.
Yeah.
And the only time you really need those things, the backups on those, is when one of those things happens. Because now your computer's gone and you're trying to restore from it.
Yeah.
So it's not a great solution at all. Not to mention that those things are prone to failure. It's a physical device. It has a finite life under the best circumstances. And if it's mobile, you may put it in your pocket, in your purse, in your briefcase.
Something could happen to it.
Yes. So as it's moving back and forth, it's taking a lot more abuse than if it were just in a firebox, in your home, and you brought it back and forth once a week, which would be great if we were disciplined to do that, but I'm not, and I don't know really many people who are.
Yeah. So concerning backups, we've talked about cloud solutions like Dropbox and OneDrive, and some of the issues with that of only a select amount of storage that it'll do automatically, or you have to go into the settings to make sure that you're covering your whole computer and that it has enough storage to actually back up all of that, and then you're paying for an additional subscription for that. And then we've also talked about external hard drives and the risks that those pose and everything that we have just covered. So we've looked at what are the most common solutions and then what are the pros and cons of each of those. But in your professional opinion, what would you say is the best solution you found for backing up a church computer?
Well, I have to tell you about one more problem with backups before I can fully answer that question.
Gotcha.
And that is when you go to restore your data from that computer, from that backup, if it doesn't work, then you really never had a backup to begin with. I cannot tell you the number of times in my career where I have seen people and I myself have gone to restore data from a backup and found out that the backup wasn't any good for a myriad of reasons. It's extremely common. It's getting better all the time, but it still happens frequently. So the best way to back up your computer is to the cloud, to a destination that has multiple versions of those backups, in case you get ransomware, for instance. Because if I'm backing up, so the way ransomware works is you get an infection and you don't know it. And immediately the ransomware running behind the scenes on your computer begins to encrypt the hard drive on your computer. And when it's done, it may not pull the trigger yet and tell you that you have ransomware. It may sit around for the next 2 weeks or even 4 weeks and encrypt anything else that it can. First of all, if I'm running daily backups of that computer, then all of those backups are encrypted as well. So now it wants you to get all of those backups encrypted so that even if you try to restore from it, again, you can't. So ransomware is incredibly dangerous and insidious.
Yeah.
If you are connected to a server or an external drive or anything else that computer has access to, it will also try to encrypt all of those destinations. Oh, and by the way, it tries to turn off your backup software as it does it. So backups in the cloud, first thing. Second thing is those backups are encrypted and immutable. So they're encrypted with a key that you know of, that you're able to restore it with. Immutable means that they cannot be changed, even by an administrator. And so
why is that important?
So if I take a copy of all of your data and put it in the cloud, what happens to the system that is backing up to it? That copy cannot be changed in any way. So ransomware can't touch it. A data breach can't delete it.
So it's like you're basically taking a picture of the state of your computer and then saving that, but then putting that in a lockbox, taking the key, and then putting the key in a place that only you can access it.
That's right.
So no one can touch that picture or that state of your computer, that moment of time of your computer, except for you or whoever else has access to the key. So what you're saying is that the ransomware won't be able to get to that because they won't have the key and it's not actually located on your computer.
Close. So there's two layers there. So encrypted, when you have the key, means that it can't be encrypted by ransomware. Immutable just means that it cannot be deleted or altered in any way. So, and that lasts for a period of time. That's predefined by whoever set that up in the first place. To finish answering the question, what is the best kind of backups? They're in the cloud. They're encrypted by you that has the key. And encryption has two layers. They're encrypted in transit, so they can't be intercepted. And then they're encrypted at rest. So when they're sitting at their destination, they can't be deciphered unless you have the key. They're immutable. They can't be changed. They can't be deleted for whatever predefined period of time. And they are managed by a professional IT person. And one of the things that means is that they are tested on a regular basis. So if I can restore from that, then I know that it works. The only way to know if a backup works is to successfully restore from it. And that is that extra step or 2 or 10 that really only IT professionals really only ever go to, and only the best of those.
So it sounds like that going through the process of actually going into the backup that you make and then testing or restoring files as a test to make sure that you can restore those files and those backups are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing is another one of those critical layers of defense.
It is. It's something that you could do yourself, but I've never met anybody who does it themselves.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I've only met a few IT people who do it, and really it was because they either had the experience to know how incredibly important it was, or they were being required to do so by someone who did have that experience.
So in your experience, how do backups help people who work in a church?
It is another layer of defense in our defense in-depth strategy. So even if I do get hit by a virus, malware, a data breach, a crashed hard drive, ransomware infection, it really doesn't matter what happens. If I've got a good backup, then I can, my whole building is gone, including the computer and the backups that I had for it that were on an external hard drive. All that's gone. I can go someplace else, turn on a new computer, restore all of that data, and I've really lost nothing. And I've seen that happen on multiple occasions, including church buildings that were leveled to the ground.
Our mission with System Shepherd is to keep you on mission. If you want to learn more about how you can use System Shepherd for your church computer, click the link in the description.